Welcome back. In this video I will talk about object-oriented programming in Python. We already know, of course, classes, because we used classes many times. Yeah, if you think, for instance, about a list, and we use a method on a list, yeah, for instance the append method. So here's the example. Let's imagine I want to build a staff management system. Now the first thing you have to ask yourself is, what do you need in a staff management system? You will need staff. Now in terms of what you need to know about staff, you have to identify them. It would be useful to have a name. Then it might be interesting to know how many hours they work. Then it would be nice to build something to display information, to be able to say, okay, can I see all my staff? Now it might be useful to start with your first building block, and that would be obviously staff. Start with a new class, so you see the class keyword, and we just call this class staff, open close brackets, and we just at the moment pass, we have to initialize an instance. So the idea is that I create a new instance, might have staff1 belongs to the staff class. So I can write something like that. And then I can do a print function here, and I can just try to see what staff1 actually looks like. Let me just run this and see what happens. Yeah, so now we get some information. We have first of all a new member created, a staff member created, and you see the type is now staff. And when you do the print statement on staff1, this funny looking thing here is indicating the place in memory. So now we have a staff member created. Of course, now this staff member does not store any information. Yeah, so if you want to store some information, you have to include now so-called attributes. You can think about an attribute bit like some additional storage, some characteristics you want to give this particular class. So in here, when we go back to our class, we now start using the first magic method. We just write it like a function, so it's def underscore underscore init underscore underscore brackets self colon, and you go inside the block, so you use indentation. Now what does that do? The underscore underscore init underscore underscore is one of these dunder double underscore or magic methods in Python. The reason they have the dunder methods is because it's very unlikely you will call your own function underscore underscore something. But otherwise you can override anything you want. Yeah, there's nothing sacred, so to speak. The dunder init method. This will run once you initialize your instance. So in here, what I specify are attributes. Note the self. The self refers to an instance of that class. Now, for instance, here I can specify self.name is equal to Amy. We try this and we get access to the attribute simply by using the dot operator and specifying name. And you see, you don't use open close brackets here because that's an attribute. It's different from a method. Here we go, and now we have it printed Amy. Of course, it would be kind of useful to modify the name. Of course, you can do it here in line 12, but honestly, that's a little bit stupid to hard code all of it. And so we use the line self.name equal to name. So I assign a name to it. We have to now pass in the name. Yeah, we just do this. We have to put in Amy as a positional argument. Now we do one more thing. We also want to add hours. So the hours you work, and again I use an argument here, and so in here I now need to specify the hours worked. So for instance, a 40-hour week if we do something weekly, and now we can do here a formatted string. So what we do next is we would like to actually outsource this class. I open a new file. So I want to keep this class in a separate file, and I can save it now in the same folder under staff.py. So what we now do is basically we have a so-called module using lowercase staff.py, and staff in capital is my class. Again, that's a convention. So classes tend to be capital letters. You have so-called upper camel case. So we do an import statement. Staff, so this goes to staff.py, import staff, and notice the spelling. The benefit of writing this compared to importing staff without specifying the class is everyone knows what you have done here. The next thing is we kind of have to now start adding staff to a list of staff. Now what I suggest is we have actually a new class. This class could be a project class if you want to do project management, or it could be the company, it could be the firm. So let me just maybe do a firm class here. So we do a new file, and I specify here my firm class. Of course later you might add some more comments in here, at the moment it's quite trivial. And we start another class, again capital letters, so it's firm. Do we need any dunder init method? Maybe we do, so we do def dunder init. And of course now it depends what we want to store here. So the firm should contain the list of people working there. So we do another self here, self dot, how do we want to call this? Maybe yeah, firm members or staff members, something like this. We can also do staff, might be too much staff, but we could maybe get away with it. And now the issue is how do we start this? I think it would be handy to start with an empty list of people, and then we add people into it. I now save it as the firm file. Good, so now we have done our firm. Now we have to import the firm. So from firm import firm, if I spell it correctly, and now we could start the firm here. So we could simply here start my firm. I just call the firm firm, so I could say it's my firm, whatever I want to call it, is equal to firm, open close brackets, that should do it. And then I can do a print statement here, and I can use my firm, then the dot operator, and I go into staff. Yeah, and it will be of course just an empty list. Let me just run this, and of course here we have now an empty list. So now we can think about how we can add staff to that list. Now we have to think very carefully how to do this, and also where to place this. Now, so if you want to modify your attributes, and again the staff attribute on my firm instance could be modified, the best way to do it is to specify a method on that particular class. So the most obvious way is to define a method in my firm class. So I can just call this maybe add staff, open close brackets. Again, we have to refer to self, that's important. In here, it would be good to pass in, of course, my staff member. I just call this staff, and we think about this in a minute if I can spell it. Good, so what I want to do is I want to append my staff list. So what I do is I simply do self.staff.append, and then I put in staff. So this is interesting because now you see slowly the power of OOP, because we know that self.staff is an empty list. So it's type list. So I can use the append method on that list. At the same time, of course, that's an attribute of my firm class. So I can put in staff into this. This class firm doesn't need to know anything about what staff really is. Yeah, staff is just anything I pass into the method. It doesn't know that staff is an instance of a staff class. And of course, when you do it professionally, you have to be very, very careful that you develop tests for all of these different attributes and methods, because otherwise these connections between various classes can get a little bit tricky. Good, let me just now look into my main file. And what I could now do is I could start adding people. So add staff to my list. So how do I do this? I simply call now my method. Yeah, I use my firm. This is the instance, the firm instance. I use a dot operator. You already see it popping up, add staff, and now I have to put in staff, and I have staff 1 created. It might be useful to actually create a few more staff just for the fun of it. Works maybe 35 hours per week, and we could also add this as well. We can do that. And then of course we could again print our attribute, so our staff list. Of course here in the staff list it doesn't look now very pretty. It's working, which is great, because it just shows of course where in memory you place your staff members. So that's not massively exciting. Now there are different ways to address that. Yeah, so we could make this the print statement a bit more interesting. So one way to do it is to do a representation of your object. Yeah, so this basically will control what you show when you do a print statement. On my staff class I can just use here def __. You see it rep r, so this is basically how you represent your class. I just refer to self. And so what that does is it would return now something when I print my instance. Now this could be anything. We could maybe only refer to names. We could do a combination of things. So what we could do is we can do simply here self.name. So it would just give me the name, and let me just run this and see what happens. And now you see we have Amy and Tom. Yeah, so that is more helpful